My mother was essentially a very private person. She told us her birthday, though for 12 years she was always turning 28. She told us that she had once worked for Wayne Collins, an ACLU attorney. She told us that she had gone to UCLA and worked as an au pair. There were at least a couple more facts about her personal story, but they were far and in between. She also didn't want to be photographed, which explains the lack of photographs. I don't know why we never inquired more persistently about her background. Perhaps it was because she would respond with, gee, this stuff isn't that interesting, and I don't want to talk about myself. And so she wouldn't. We were taught not to ask questions of our elders and not to embarrass the family. To press further seemed disrespectful. Over time, a few things leaked out. As far as I knew, she had been born and raised in Hayward, in Northern California. This turned out to be actually Gardena in Southern California. The date was January 8th, and the year was indeterminate in order to perpetuate the Forever 28 thing. The actual year was 1925. She lived during the war in Gila Bend. She never mentioned those experiences and explained it by saying that the Issei never talked about such things because it represented shame. I pointed out that she was a Nisei, and she said, why change a good thing? I found her yearbook on eBay. There's a tiny mention of each of the graduates who did not have their pictures in it. Mom's was the third name. She met my father on a blind date, and they had chili in Oakland, though this story is of some question. Anyway, they married and had 4 children, Annie, John, David, and Richard. If there seems to be a few gaps in the record, it stymied me as well. How did she end up in Oakland? Who introduced them? 5 years ago, she confessed that she had transferred to Berkeley. I'm pretty sure that she had studied art at UCLA, and not just because she said it once, but because she painted, made pots, and did a lot of creative things. Her discretion seemed to emanate from family. She had been brought up in a Japanese-American household with all the requisite modesty, reserve, and restraint. It wasn't that she couldn't raise her voice or show disapproval. We were all well accustomed to that. It was her upbringing that kept everything within family. I suppose I like to think that Mom lived in the moment. Looking into the past wasn't her thing. There wasn't time. She was constantly on the move trying to raise 4 children, each who were the product of my father's notion of a progressive upbringing, an emphasis on patience, understanding, and encouragement. I guess 2 out of 3 wasn't bad. The result was 4 neurotic, semi-endearing, completely spoiled brats. She tried to keep us from jumping off tennis light poles, growing grass in the backyard, tying John up to a chair, breaking the contract where David promised to be my slave for life, washing the jar of cold cream off Annie that she had slattered all over her naked body. There she was, her and us, 4 terribly self-assured kids, each separated by only 2 years, trusted with the responsibility to do all the cooking, washing, household chores, and discipline. Armed only with her trusty plastic baseball bat with which to whack us, she forged ahead. We hid that damn bat 100 times, but she always found it. We baked it in the oven once, and she just bought another one. She was human. Sometimes if we took the time to notice anyone else's state than our own, there would be a pause where her eyes almost rolled up into her head and all the fatigue and frustration would well up in her eyes. And for that brief eternity where you wondered if she would fall over, she would laugh a big, gruff, loud bark. Over time, that bark would get gruffier from all the smoking, and she added a few heh-heh-hehs, but it was that laugh which would get her through the torturous task of raising Sakai kids. The toll on her was never measured, but most certainly existed. A sanity hearing was clearly needed when she invited Steve Nielsen to stay at the house so that he could complete high school. Then she compounded that misjudgment by extending the same invitation to Jeff Carvel. I was out of the house, but now she was in charge of 5 kids. That kind of math would be overwhelming to most, but she put kindness in front of her opportunity to find peace. She never gave up. She was fierce and everlasting in her battle against misbehavior. One day, after having arrived from Los Angeles, she pulled me close and in a quiet, gruffy whisper told me, "David and John, they're so smart. They hid marijuana in my refrigerator and they thought I wouldn't find it, but I did." I asked her, "What did you do with it?" "I hid it," she said. When asked, she reached deep behind the pretzels and pulled out a half-filled baggie of crumpled-up material. I looked at it, but was only allowed to touch it if I promised not to run away. I took the baggie and pressed the material between my fingers. Looking up, I said, This baggie contains crushed walnuts. I think it's one of the ingredients of your toffee cookies. She looked closer, and with just a bit of joy washing away from her victory, she took the baggie away, and without breaking stride, she stuffed the baggie back behind the pretzels and said, "Never mind." She was the graceful host who every weekend entertained tennis rabble that would flock to Dad's tennis court, and only mildly complained every minute of the day, and almost never held any personal acrimony to any single person. The fact that a woman who took on so much and gave so much would be reticent to pass on the details is fascinating to me. The magnificence of her giving was well worth overcoming the shackles of culture. She had every right to state more and receive more. She should have shouted to the stars the depth and the magnitude of her accomplishments. But I guess that wouldn't have been modest. I guess that wouldn't have been classy. And that wouldn't be Mom.